Hello and welcome everybody. As I stated in my overview video, these videos are not meant to be instructional videos. So if you're looking for that, this is not going to help you. Really, this is to support my books by giving you a taste of what you can expect if you choose to study out of one of these books, and to reinforce or clarify the materials found in those books. This one is in support of my rock book, Essential Rock for the Drum Set. Essential Rock for the Drum Set is based on the way I learned to play this music. When I started playing, I was mostly into the swing music that my parents listened to, especially Benny Goodman at Carnegie Hall. Nothing wrong with Gene Krupa, right? There was also an LP called Ellington Showcase featuring Dave Black on a tune called Gonna Tan Your Hide. It still sounds amazing today. But when I was in the 7th grade, I went to my first dance. There was a band rocking with electric guitars and the whole works. I thought it was the most amazing thing I'd ever heard. So when I went to my drum lesson the next week, I asked my teacher, Ben Udell, if he taught people to play rock on the drum set. Benny was a funny, salty guy from the Bronx, an excellent musician too. And he said, "Oh, Warda, this is a music studio. That not being music is not taught in this music studio." Okay. So I was on my own. Fortunately, this was in the fairly early days of rock, like 1961, and rock was maybe 6 years old at this point. So things were still pretty basic. Rock drumming was evolving just as my own drumming did, so it wasn't hard to keep pace. As things progressed and became more complex, I realized there were a finite number of basic families of beats with lots of variations. In other words, in any common rock rhythm, there was almost always a backbeat, that, like a strong accent on the snare drum on 2 and 4, usually 8th notes on the hi-hat or ride cymbal, and a bass drum pattern which really defined the way those rhythms functioned. In those early days, in the 1960s, the bass drum never deviated from playing on the beat or on the ands, so there were just 8 positions in any given measure for the bass or kick drum to be played. I came up with a system of 6 different families or root rhythms that I'll demonstrate here in just a minute. From there were lots of variations, but they still functioned in similar ways to the root rhythm that each was related to. As time went on, more and more notes were added, first on the snare drum, later on the bass drum too, but they still functioned the same way within these families or root rhythms. Now, I'll show you what I mean. So here are the 6 basic root rhythms. It's number 1, kind of the mother of all drum beats. 4 on the floor, 4 quarter notes on the bass drum, snare drum on 2 and 4, 8th notes on the hi-hat, All right, number 2, very similar. Now, the big difference is, though, that there's not a bass drum on 2 and 4, so that lets that develop into some very different things from number 1. Number 3, so we start adding some notes on the bass drum with number 3. Number 4, still different. Number 5, much more loaded up on the bass drum. And number 6, this one has kind of a hole in the middle of the measure. The bass drum doesn't play on beat 3. Okay, all right, we can easily make variations of even these most basic patterns by simply adding or removing a note on the bass drum. So here's number 4. We're going to just leave I'm going to play it in original form first. Okay, now here it is with the very last bass drum note omitted on the and of 4. Maybe we want to play two notes at the beginning of the measure and leave off the bass drum on 4 and. So it'd be like this. So There are just some simple ways that we can vary even those very basic beats. All right, let's have a brief tour of how we can take a basic rhythm and kind of follow it through, adding complexity in an ordered fashion as we go. So we're going to focus on number 6, and I'm just going to add a little bit, just the way it's presented in the book. First we'll add some snare. First we have some variations, then we add some notes on the snare, then we add some notes on the bass drum, some 16th notes. Here it is. So, basic number 6. Now some snare drum. Now some more snare drum. Now we'll start adding some bass drum 16th notes here and there. So, you know, we've got things pretty loaded up there. Now, we don't actually have to keep all that snare drum in there. We can play the same rhythm with just, you know, the bass drum. All right, we can also change the hi-hat pattern. So. We can also put the rhythm on the ride cymbal and change that up too. So let's see what that sounds like. All right, did you get all that? Yeah, there's a lot of things we can do. We can, you know, change up. There's a lot of different hi-hat patterns. More complex. Changed up the snare drum too. So that's how the basic rhythms are developed in the first 15 chapters in the book. It's the premise that much of the book is based on. It offers a systematic approach to learning rhythms, but also helps identify those rhythms on recordings, as well as coming up with beats that work well with various bass patterns when playing or learning original material in a band. Each chapter also includes 2-measure phrases using the skill groups in that chapter, as well as over-the-bar phrasing where the beat doesn't begin on beat 1. I've never seen this addressed in a rock book, but it's extremely common and something that can be very confusing without some clear guidance. So let me show you what I mean. Let's play a 2-measure phrase where it takes 2 full measures for each beat to develop and conclude itself. So 2 full measures. Now, who can tell me who played that group? It's not a contest. That was My Sharona, played by Bruce Gary of the Knack, you know, very iconic rock beat. He also played it on the snare and toms, but this is the snare kick hi-hat version of that beat. The point is, though, that it is a 2-measure phrase. Let's do one that let's do an over the bar phrase, okay? I've never seen that addressed either. And this just means that once the beat starts, it doesn't begin and end in 1 measure. So we start it, and then on repetitions, 1 is not played on the bass drum, and the groove will usually be anchored on beat 3 and is phrased over the bar. So here's what that sounds like. Let's try another one. So if you're counting, notice that, on beat 1, the bass drum is not playing. The rhythm actually revolves more around beat 3. It anchors on beat 3. So over the bar phrasing. And that's all covered in the first 15 chapters, just the first 15. There are also numerous other styles covered, like a variety of shuffles, 12/8 blues, funk, fills, halftime, double time, modifying the backbeat, and more, all from beginning to pretty advanced. The book is something like 220 pages long. I've never understood how anybody could write a book about rock and cover everything in 60 or 80 pages. I think the book is pretty complete. There are some sample pages on my website, and I hope you'll take a look. Okay, that's it for this video. As always, I want to thank my friends at Paiste Cymbals for their support over the years, and also the Conservatory of Music and Dance at the University of Missouri at Kansas City, where I teach. And please be in touch if there are questions about any of this. I provided links to my website for easy access. As always, thanks very much for watching, and play strong.